Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And by the way, Megan is officially moving in with us starting tomorrow. My son raised his wine glass with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The turkey was still warm on the table. The cranberry sauce glistened under the chandelier. And my heart stopped. Megan leaned back in her chair, twirling her fork like she owned the place. "You won't even notice me, Eleanor. I'm very low maintenance." She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that made my skin crawl. "Besides, this house is way too big for just one old lady." Old lady. The words hung in the air like smoke, but her smile faded when I smiled back, reached into my purse, and pulled out a manila envelope. "Well then," I said, my voice steady for the first time in months. "I have some news too." And that's when everything changed. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the woman I used to be before I became a ghost in my own home. I'm Eleanor, 67 years old. Retired nurse after 42 years of night shifts, holiday rotations, and holding strangers' hands while they took their last breaths. I raised my son Daniel alone, after his father walked out when the boy was just 3. No child support, no apologies. Just a note on the kitchen counter that said I can't do this anymore. So I did it. All of it. Alone. I worked double shifts at Austin General so Daniel could have braces, soccer cleats, and a college fund. I sold my grandmother's antique brooch to pay for his senior prom. I skipped meals so he could have seconds. I wore the same winter coat for 15 years so he could have new textbooks every semester. And I never once complained. Never once reminded him of the sacrifices, because that's what mothers do. We give without keeping receipts. Daniel was my pride. Valedictorian of his high school class, full scholarship to UT Austin, graduated with honors in accounting. The day he got his CPA license, he hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "Mom," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Everything I am is because of you. When I have my own family someday, you'll always come first." Always. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? This was the same boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The same boy who made me construction paper birthday cards every year until he was 16. The same boy who held my hand at his grandmother's funeral and said, "Don't worry, Mom, I'll take care of you when you're old." That's a promise. Promises. They're so easy to make when you're young, and the future seems infinite. Daniel met Megan 3 years ago at a corporate retreat in Denver. She was a marketing consultant. Polished. Ambitious. Beautiful in that intimidating way that made me feel like a wilted flower next to a hothouse orchid. I wanted to like her. I really did. When Daniel first brought her home, I made her favorite meal, beef Wellington, spent 8 hours in the kitchen. I gave her the guest room with the nice sheets. I showed her my garden, my photo albums, my heart. "Your mother is so sweet," Megan told Daniel that first weekend. But I noticed she never said it to me directly. The wedding was small, courthouse ceremony. Megan said big weddings were tacky. I offered to help pay for a reception at least, but she waved me off. "Save your money, Eleanor. You'll need it." I should have heard the warning in those words, but I was too busy being happy for my son. They moved in 6 months ago. "Just temporarily," Daniel said, "until we save enough for a down payment on our own place." Megan had quit her consulting job to explore new opportunities. Daniel's accounting firm had downsized his department. Money was tight. "Of course you can stay," I said, because what mother says no to her only child? The first week was fine. Megan helped with dishes. Daniel mowed the lawn. We had dinners together. It almost felt like a real family. Then the changes began. "Eleanor, do you really need to watch the news so loud? It gives me migraines." Megan pressed her fingers to her temples dramatically. "Maybe you could use headphones? Or just watch in your room?" I had watched the evening news in that living room for 30 years, but I nodded, picked up the remote, and retreated to my bedroom. "Mom, Megan thinks your room would make a better home office." Daniel stood in my doorway, not quite meeting my eyes. The guest room has that nice view, and you don't really need all this space, right? My room. The room where I had nursed Daniel through chickenpox. The room where I had grieved my mother's death. The room with the window facing east because I love watching the sunrise. If it helps you too, I heard myself say. And I moved my belongings into the smaller guest room, the one that faced the neighbor's fence. The bathroom came next. Then the kitchen. Then the living room. Piece by piece, I was erased from my own home. Eleanor, your cooking is a bit heavy for our digestive systems. We're doing keto now. Maybe you could eat separately so you don't tempt us? Megan's smile was sweet as arsenic. Mom, Megan's book club is meeting here Thursday. Could you maybe stay upstairs? They feel awkward with an older person around. Daniel didn't even look ashamed anymore. Eleanor, that armchair has to go. It doesn't match our aesthetic. I've already called Goodwill to pick it up tomorrow. That armchair. The one my late mother had given me when I first bought this house. The one where I had rocked Daniel to sleep as a baby. The one where I sat every evening to read my devotionals. I should have fought back. I know that now. But I had spent 67 years believing that good mothers sacrifice. Good mothers don't make waves. Good mothers put their children's happiness above everything. So I said nothing. I smiled. I adapted. Until I couldn't anymore. The breaking point came 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. I was in the kitchen making my famous pecan pie, the one I'd made every Thanksgiving for 40 years. Daniel used to say it was his favorite thing about the holiday. Megan walked in, wrinkled her nose, and said, "Eleanor, we're doing a sugar-free Thanksgiving this year. Doctor's orders." She snatched the pie crust from my hands and threw it in the trash. "I've already ordered a keto-friendly dessert from that fancy bakery downtown." You understand. I stood there, flour on my apron, watching 40 years of tradition get dumped with the coffee grounds and eggshells. That night, I cried for the first time in months, not delicate tears, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep and broken. I sat on the edge of my narrow bed in the cramped guest room and wondered how I had become a stranger in my own home. That's when Dorothy found me. Dorothy is my next-door neighbor, 72 years old, retired family court judge. Sharp as a tack and twice as pointed. She had been watching through her kitchen window when Megan threw out my pie crust. Eleanor. She stood at my back door, her voice firm but kind. "We need to talk." I let her in. I made tea with shaking hands. And then I told her everything. The room. The bathroom. The kitchen. The armchair. The way they looked through me like I was furniture. The way my own son had stopped calling me Mom and started calling me Eleanor, as if we were distant acquaintances. Dorothy listened without interrupting. When I finished, she set down her teacup and said 5 words that changed everything. "Eleanor, whose name is on the deed." I blinked. "Mine. This house is mine. I paid off the mortgage 8 years ago. And your bank accounts?" "Mine. My pension. My savings. All in my name." Dorothy leaned forward. "Then why are you acting like a tenant in your own home? Why are you asking permission to exist in a house you own outright?" I had no answer. Because somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that I was the owner. Megan had been so confident, so commanding, that I had started believing I was the guest. "They're taking advantage of you," Dorothy said plainly. "Financial manipulation, emotional abuse, isolation from your own life. I've seen it 100 times in my courtroom, and it usually gets worse before anyone has the courage to stop it. But that's my son," I whispered. "He's all I have. Then he should be protecting you, not participating in your erasure." Dorothy's eyes were fierce. "Eleanor, you didn't work 42 years as a nurse, raise a child alone, and build this life just to hand it over to a woman who throws out your pie crust. You're stronger than this. I know you are." That night, I couldn't sleep. Dorothy's words kept echoing in my head. I pulled out the deed to my house and read it 3 times. Eleanor Marie Patterson, sole owner. I opened my bank statements and saw what I had been avoiding. Charges I didn't recognize. Restaurant bills for places I'd never been. Online shopping from stores I'd never heard of. $3,000 in the past 4 months. Spent without my knowledge or permission. My hands shook, but not from weakness. From anger. From the slow, burning realization that I had been robbed in more ways than one. The next morning, I called my bank. I requested new cards, with a new PIN that only I would know. Then I called an elder law attorney that Dorothy recommended. A young woman named Patricia, who specialized in exactly this kind of case, Mrs. Patterson. Patricia said after reviewing my documents, "You have every right to set boundaries in your own home. You have every right to control your own finances, and you have every right to ask anyone, including family, to leave your property if they are causing you harm." "But he's my son," I said, the old guilt creeping back. "Being family doesn't give anyone the right to abuse you," Patricia replied firmly. "And what you're describing, the isolation, the financial control, the erosion of your autonomy, that's textbook elder abuse. You don't have to tolerate it." For 2 weeks, I prepared in silence. I gathered every bank statement, every receipt, every piece of evidence. I documented the unauthorized charges. I took photos of how they had rearranged my home without asking. I recorded conversations when Megan made snide comments about my age, my relevance, my right to exist in my own space. And I waited for Thanksgiving. They had no idea. Megan was too busy planning her sugar-free menu and inviting her own friends to notice that I had stopped cowering. Daniel was too absorbed in pleasing his wife to see that his mother had finally woken up. So there we were, Thanksgiving evening. The turkey Megan had ordered from an expensive caterer because apparently my cooking wasn't good enough anymore. The guests had left. It was just the 3 of us at the dining table. And Daniel made his announcement. Megan was moving in permanently. No more pretense of it being temporary. "You won't even notice me, Eleanor." Megan's voice dripped with false sweetness. "This house is way too big for just one old lady." I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope. "Actually, I have news too." The room went silent. I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, the same clock Megan had called depressing and wanted to throw away. "What is that?" Megan's voice had lost its honey. "This," I said, placing the first document on the table, "is the deed to this house, in my name only. Sole owner." Daniel frowned. "Mom, we know that." "What's your point?" "My point is that I've been treated like a guest in my own home for 6 months. My point is that I've been pushed out of my room, my bathroom, my kitchen, my living room. My point is that I've been made to feel like a burden for existing in a house I built with my own hands." Megan rolled her eyes. "Eleanor, you're being dramatic. We were just trying to help you simplify your life." "Simplify?" I pulled out the bank statements. "Is that what you call $3,000 in unauthorized charges? Restaurants I've never been to? Clothes I've never seen? A spa day that I certainly never took?" Daniel's face went pale. "Mom, I can explain." "No." My voice was stronger than I expected. "For 6 months, I've been quiet. I've adapted. I've made myself small so you could be comfortable. But I'm done." I stood up, feeling taller than I had in years. "You have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. Both of you." Megan jumped to her feet. "You can't do that." "We have rights. We're family." "You're guests," I corrected her. "Guests who have overstayed their welcome and abused my hospitality. And as of this moment, you're no longer welcome in my home." "Daniel, say something." Megan grabbed his arm, her perfect composure cracking, but Daniel just sat there, staring at the bank statements. I could see him adding up the charges, recognizing the restaurants, the stores, the lies. "Megan," he said slowly, "did you really spend $3,000 of my mother's money?" "It's not that simple," Megan sputtered. "She never uses it anyway. At her age, what does she need it for?" At her age. There it was again. As if turning 67 meant I had forfeited my right to my own money, my own decisions, my own life. "I've also consulted an attorney," I said, pulling out Patricia's business card. She specializes in elder law. She's informed me that what you've been doing, the financial manipulation, the isolation, the emotional abuse, has a legal name. And consequences. Megan's face went white. You're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? I walked to the armchair, my mother's armchair, which they had shoved into the corner of the garage. Am I blowing it out of proportion when you tried to donate my family heirlooms? When you banned me from my own living room? When you made me eat alone in my bedroom like a prisoner? Daniel put his head in his hands. Mom, I didn't know. You knew. My voice broke slightly, but I pushed through. You knew every time you told me to be quiet. Every time you took her side. Every time you looked the other way. You knew, Daniel. You just didn't care. The silence that followed was deafening. 30 days, I repeated. That's more than generous. Use it wisely. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. The November air rushed in. Cold and clean. Dinner is over. So is this conversation. Megan stormed out first, muttering threats about lawyers and elder abuse. Ironic, given she was the abuser. Daniel lingered at the threshold. Mom, he said, his voice small, I'm sorry. I know you are. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the little boy who used to call me his hero. But sorry isn't enough anymore. You need to prove it. He left. I closed the door. And for the first time in 6 months, the lock didn't feel like a prison. It felt like protection. The next morning, Dorothy came over with coffee and kolaches. I saw them leave last night, she said. Megan looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. I laughed. Actually laughed. It had been so long since I'd laughed. Eleanor, Dorothy said, squeezing my hand. I'm proud of you. Those 3 words meant more than she knew. The 30 days passed in a flurry of activity. I changed the locks. I froze the compromised accounts and opened new ones. I reclaimed my bedroom, my bathroom, my kitchen. I moved my mother's armchair back to its rightful place by the window. Megan called 17 times. I didn't answer. Daniel called 32 times. I answered twice. Both conversations were short. Mom, please reconsider. Have you found an apartment yet? We're looking. But. Then keep looking. On the 30th day, I stayed at Dorothy's house. I didn't want to be there when they packed. When I came home that evening, the house was empty. They had left a note on the kitchen counter. Mom, this isn't over. You'll regret this when you're alone and sick. Megan was right about you. I crumpled the note and threw it away, just like Megan had thrown away my pie crust. Some things belong in the garbage. 6 months later, my doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon. Daniel stood on the porch, thinner than I remembered. Dark circles under his eyes. No Megan in sight. Mom, he said quietly. Can we talk? I let him in. Made coffee. We sat in the living room, in my mother's armchair and the couch, like strangers meeting for the first time. Megan left, he said. 2 months ago. Once the money dried up, and we had to actually pay rent, she decided I wasn't worth the trouble. I nodded. I wasn't surprised. I've been doing a lot of thinking. Daniel stared into his coffee cup. About how I treated you. About the things I let happen. About the promises I broke. And I was wrong. His voice cracked. I was so focused on making Megan happy that I forgot who was always there for me, who sacrificed everything so I could have a future, who loved me unconditionally, even when I didn't deserve it. I waited. I had learned the value of silence. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, Daniel continued. I'm not here to move back in, or borrow money, or any of that. I'm here to say that I'm sorry. Really sorry. And I want to try to rebuild what I destroyed, if you'll let me. I looked at my son, the boy I had raised, the man I had lost, the person sitting before me now, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Genuine remorse. Rebuilding takes time, I said finally, and it takes proof, not just words. I know. He nodded. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. I want my mom back. I reached over and patted his hand. Then show me. Show me you've changed. Show me that the boy who promised to take care of me is still in there somewhere. He visited every Sunday after that, brought groceries, fixed the fence I'd been meaning to repair, sat with me on the porch and actually talked about his life, his regrets, his hopes, about me and my life and my dreams. It took time. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. But slowly, carefully, we found our way back to something real. Not the old relationship that was gone forever, but something new. Something built on mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. 2 years later, I'm sitting in my garden, watching the roses bloom. My roses. In my garden, in my house, my life. Daniel is inside, making lunch. His new girlfriend, a kind woman named Sarah, who treats me like a person instead of an obstacle, is setting the table. Dorothy is coming over later, for cards and wine. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not bitter. I'm just free. The other day, a woman at the community center asked me for advice. Her daughter-in-law had moved in and was making her feel invisible. "What did you do?" she asked, tears in her eyes. I told her what Dorothy told me. Remember whose name is on the deed. Remember who you are. Remember that loving your children doesn't mean letting them destroy you. She nodded, wiping her eyes. But I'm scared to be alone. Being alone is not the worst thing, I said, taking her hand. The worst thing is being surrounded by family and feeling completely invisible. Trust me. I've been there. I've learned a lot in these past 2 years. I've learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. I've learned that love without respect is just manipulation in disguise. I've learned that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity, your voice, your life. And most importantly, I've learned that I am not just someone's mother. I am Eleanor, a woman who worked for 42 years, a woman who raised a child alone, a woman who built a life with her own hands, a woman who deserves to be treated with kindness and respect. So if you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, I want you to know something. You are the owner of your own house, the house of your life. No one gets to decide you're not welcome in it. No one gets to make you a guest in your own story. It's never too late to take back what's yours. I promise you that. If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my place? When is love too much, and when does sacrifice become self-destruction? Share your perspective in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories like this, where we listen together, reflect together, and grow together, stick around. I'll see you in the next one.